Hey everyone, welcome back. And we are covering Ruth chapter 1 today. We've done two introductions, one kind of intro and one overview. And today we're going to be discussing Ruth chapter 1. And I look forward to kind of digging in deeper in each chapter as we move forward. So we kind of joked around in the one of the intros that there was famine, family relocation, two weddings, and three funerals. So it's a little bit, tight here as far as what's going on. But I want to remind us that there's 10 years that happened here. And if you think about even just the last 3 years, a lot has happened. So in our lives. And so when I think about a 10-year lifespan of just any of us, a lot happens, right? A lot. And that doesn't seem like a lot. It seems like a lot in one sentence, right? To say that there was a famine in the land and the family uprooted their whole entire family and moved. And then the boys, the dad died, and then the boys got married, and then they died, and then they moved back. So I mean, there's just a lot going on, but again, truncated story. So when I think about um how that all must have gone down, I think it's interesting to kind of consider where we are in the story in chapter 1 is these three women, these three widows that really have no way to survive because Elimelech, Naomi's husband, okay, has land, but it's not Naomi's. So we live differently now that like if our husband died, we get everything that he has, right? It's the wife's first right to have. And vice versa, right? If the wife dies, the husband gets everything the wife owns. So it's interesting though, back then, wives, women didn't have any rights to anything. So when Naomi is pretty much imploring these two daughters-in-law of hers, she's saying, go find your rest. And what that means is security. And Orpah, does the math. And in that day and age, you don't find yourself to a widow. Okay, widows were lumped in with the destitute. They were lumped in with people who were super poor because they had nothing. So when you think about even the story moving forward, the gleaning, going after and picking up basically leftover grains was for widows and the fatherless and sojourners, people who were traveling through and had no way of making any money or making any having any food. So when you think about what Ruth did, it's unthinkable. It's very like not usual at all. It's not that she was just like, oh, I love you and I'm going to. No, she bound herself to her. Your people will be my people. Where you're buried, I'm going to be buried. Where you live, I'm going to live. Your God will be my God. Like she vowed. This was more than just I'm just coming with you. It's, I'm clinging myself to you. And there's another passage in the Bible where, we see Jacob clinging. Remember he was wrestling with God and he's clinging to God, and we find out that it's God, and God, the only way to get that God was able to get him to stop clinging to him is to touch his hip, so he had a limp for the rest of his life. And I think about this, that Ruth was clinging to her, and I think about how when we know true truth, when we understand that there's something bigger here, that it's not me clinging to a widow, because that would be unthinkable. It's me clinging to her God, that Naomi had a God, our God, who was true, who wasn't what the Moabites were worshiping, right? It was completely different. And I think about that as a first picture of our relationship with Jesus, that we have to cling to him because he is our salvation. You don't cling to a widow. There's no salvation in a widow. Does that make sense? Like she's got nothing. She's not going to have anything. She's going to have a very, very, very hard life. And she clung to her. It's almost like saying, I'm giving up my chances of having a family. I'm giving up my chances of having a family name. I'm giving up everything. And I'm clinging to like the worst case scenario, a widow. Again, back then, nowadays, we don't think in these terms, but back then it was. So when I consider that I think, man, that is a true testament to us as well. Like people laugh at us. People probably laughed at her. You're what? You're clinging to a widow? People laugh at us. You're clinging to who? Jesus? Come on. Have faith in you. You do you. You find yourself, find your inner being, right? All these things that we hear, that find your trueness, yourself. It's all about you. You are your own queen, right? We hear this all the time. And I think, man, we are so going against the grain of what society thinks that we should be doing. So I just want you to kind of consider that, and consider the journey ahead wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't something that, I would have ever considered looking forward to. And if I think about that, it's about 60 miles trip along the Dead Sea, traveling north on the east side and then over, all through what is now present day Jordan, all the way around. And it's a trek going down into Jordan Valley and then back up. And they estimate it probably took the women about 7 to 10 days. And in talking to other women about this, they all assume that they just walked. They just walked there and it was all good. But no, like these were women who often would get raped, right? Or murdered. It's like you don't just go alone. So I'm certain that they traveled in a caravan of other people. And that's why it took so long. Because when you travel in a caravan, it does take longer, and they stop and they eat and they rest and they make camp. And so you think about doing 100 miles, 60 miles, at what level, down and up and all of that. So at what level is that something that's, they didn't have hiking boots, they had sandals. So I just think it's an interesting thing to consider. That trek was not easy. And to just put yourself in Ruth's shoes. She's leaving everything that she ever knew. And I know some people try to make this look like, well, she's leaving like the terrible God that they would like sacrifice babies to. Again, that was normal for her. She grew up with that. It wasn't like all the babies are sacrificed. It was probably like one every fourth year or something. Like, I don't know what it was, but I'm just saying it was normal. And we think about other cultures where slaughtering a cow is really bad, but here we do it all the time, right? And it's like, no, not a problem for us, but to them it's like horrendous that we would ever consider slaughtering a cow. So just know that different cultures have different belief systems. So I don't believe that Orpah was thinking like, I'm good, I'm going back and I'm going back to this evil. No, I think she was just going back to what she knew. And I don't think Ruth was saying, I don't want to go back to that. I think she understood that she was clinging to, the deck was stacked against her, but she knew that was the right thing. And she had this calm peace about her. So I love this story. I think it's a beautiful one. And we will see you guys on the next one, on chapter 2. All right. Bye, guys.